To bring us information on the current situation in Haiti, our colleague Catriona Gols interviewed Danny Shaw, professor of Latin American Studies who recently returned from the country. Let's have a look.
Haiti continues to see major political and social upheaval, a situation now aggravated by the health crisis sparked by the COVID-19 pandemic. To bring us more details on what exactly is going on in the country, we now welcome Danny Shaw, Professor of Latin American Studies and Senior Research Fellow at the Council on Hemispheric Affairs based in Washington, D.C. Danny, thank you for joining us again.
Thanks for having me, Catriona.
Danny, you've just spent a couple of months in Haiti. The limited coverage in the mainstream media depicts high levels of violence and increasing public outrage. What can you tell us about the situation on the ground?
I think it's important to say, first of all, this is not a crisis. This is a rebellion. It's an anti-neoliberal rebellion. It's an anti-imperialist rebellion. There are millions of Haitians in motion in Port-au-Prince, across Haiti, in the diaspora, standing up to Jovenel Moise and his foreign backers. Haitians are all too aware of decade after decade of foreign meddling in their people's democracies, and that's why we see millions of Haitians in the streets every Sunday and every week. And tomorrow again, they're going to be in front of the presidential palace demanding an end to corruption, dictatorship, kidnapping, and neocolonialism.
Danny, Haitians are not just suffering from gang violence, but also from police repression against protesters. And there have been reports of protests by the police themselves as part of the Phantom 509 group. The situation appears to be chaotic. Why is that?
Yeah, there's major divisions in the state. There's cracks in the police. An average police officer is making $500 a month to repress, but also to risk their lives in this fight against armed gangs. Some people call them gangs, others call them criminal elements, or the lumpen proletariat, which is heavily armed. It's really not clear. What is clear is one of the laws of capitalism and imperialism and white supremacy that oppressed people are at war with one another. A lot of the violence has been internalized. So what I saw up until last night, I just returned from Haiti a few hours ago, and there are ongoing sieges and massacres in La Saline, in Bel Air, in Delma 6. So this is ongoing horrific violence against Haiti's most oppressed communities. It's not entirely clear if it's gang on gang, how the government exactly is involved, which gangs the government is supporting. And then you have the police, which are also divided, as I mentioned.
Danny, the political crisis or the uprising in Haiti, as you said, has seen tens of thousands of protesters calling for President Jovenel Moise to resign, arguing that his constitutional term came to an end in February. What can you tell us about this situation, and how will it be affected by the government's plan to draft a new constitution?
Jovenel Moise in the PHTK, the party of dictatorship and neocolonialism, has propaganda strewn across the country about this quote-unquote constitutional referendum coming up in June. The people of Haiti are ripping down this publicity, these signs for a constitutional referendum. They're dead set against it. They hold up their 1987 constitution, which was the result of decades and decades of people's struggle, where women's liberation is enshrined into that constitution and popular sovereignty. So the fact that Jovenel Moise not only would refuse to step down from power, but then at the height of this controversy, with so many people already in the streets, as you've mentioned, that he would now try to subvert and overturn the people's constitution, it's just going to add gasoline to the fire. So we should expect more and more rebellion in the upcoming weeks.
Danny, after your time in the country and given the context and the situation there, are there any prospects for real change that could really benefit the Haitian people?
No question. This is Dessalines behind me here, has taught the colonizers of yesteryear and the colonizers of today there's always hope. The Haitian people really share with the world and project unity and revolutionary optimism. They continue to fight. There are people trained in centuries and centuries of anti-colonial combat. So I think although the mainstream media has a complete whiteout on what is happening in Haiti, how important that we can continue to uplift and study and highlight all of these important voices of Haitian resistance and unity and revolutionary optimism.
Danny Shaw ending there on a note of hope, Professor and Senior Research Fellow at the Council on Hemispheric Affairs. Thank you so much for joining us and for offering your insight into the events in Haiti. Thank you.